Hey, thanks, Sam, and thanks to all of you for joining in the broadcast today. We're going to talk about the new Reg B appraisal rules. And, we've had since the mid-1990s a provision in Reg B that required you to choose an alternative. You could either give a notice of the applicant's right to receive a copy of an appraisal developed in connection with a loan to be secured by a dwelling, or you could automatically give them a copy. Well, they're making tweaks with this new rule, and the tweaks are significant, and they're particular enough that you really have to understand. There are 7 new facets. First of all, that option that you have had until this takes effect next January to give a notice of the right to request, that's going away. There is instead going to be an automatic delivery of the appraisal. There's a new notice requirement that you're going to have, and the good news is this set of requirements is going to apply in a narrower type of lending than you had experienced before. So it limits the type of applications to which these requirements apply, but it's going to broaden the circumstances when you give the copy. There's actually a customer waiver option. Why do you need a waiver? Because there's a timing requirement for providing the copy of the appraisal, and so they can waive the timing requirement, and they're going to prohibit you from charging for the copy, not charging for the appraisal. You can still do that, but you can't charge for the copy that you can provide. And this is going to be able to affect the timing of your closings because of the mandate that you provide the copy of the appraisal ahead of time. And we'll get into all the particulars, but we'll go through and we'll help you understand that this is now going to just apply when you have an application for credit that would be secured by a first lien on a dwelling. We'll talk about the timing for you to give the initial notice to the person that they have a right to receive a copy. We're going to talk about the timing for you actually providing the copy, and we'll talk about the waiver. Now, over on page 2, you see this is a rule of the new agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So if you want to get access to the Federal Register document that has all the prefatory comments and so forth, you can go to the CFPB's website at either consumerfinance.gov or at cfpb.gov. If you'll turn over to page 3, we think it's important to understand the context within which this new rule is being issued. It is not in a vacuum. It's part of a larger picture that affects the mortgage lending process. So the Dodd-Frank Act has Title 14, which is MRAPLA, the Mortgage Reform and Anti-Predatory Lending Act. And within MRAPLA, the agencies, sometimes just the CFPB, sometimes multiple agencies, were required to adopt regulations to implement the new statutory provisions. And so we refer to these collectively as the Title 14 rulemakings. And as you no doubt know, they've tossed out a bunch of these, or I shouldn't say tossed out because that makes you think they've gone away, which they haven't. They've coughed up a number of these. In January, there was a group on January 10th, and then another group January 18th, and they kept publishing even through Sunday, January 20th. So let's look at what this is a piece of. Let's look at some of the other puzzle pieces here, starting with the Interagency Appraisals Rule. So you've got the Reg B stuff that deals with appraisals that we're going to focus on today, but also Dodd-Frank has imposed a whole set of new appraisal requirements on what the law refers to as higher risk mortgage loans. And they required regulations to implement that part of the law to be done on an interagency basis. So they just came out with those on January 18th. We call those the Interagency Appraisals Final Rule. You've got some similarities in there in terms of the fact that you're going to have to provide a copy of appraisals without charging the applicant for the copy. You're going to have to give a notice of their right to receive that, but you have some differences in there in terms of what triggers it. And as you'll learn when you study that particular rule, when it came to the final rule, they kind of tossed out the term higher risk mortgage, and instead they've applied these new appraisal rules, which are extensive, to certain kinds of higher-priced mortgage loans. Now, the second piece of the puzzle is the ability-to-repay rules, and under those, you can't engage in a closed-end consumer credit transaction secured by a dwelling unless you have ascertained the borrower's ability to repay, and you've confirmed and documented that. And then if the loan that you make is to be presumed to be compliant with that, you're going to want to fall within either the safe harbor for compliance by making it a qualified mortgage, or a rebuttable presumption that you have complied. And if you don't, you could face a private right of action by the borrower for up to 3 years after consummation, where they try to get all their finance charges and fees back. There are all kinds of consequences, but the characteristics of the loan in order to be a qualified mortgage have to meet very, very detailed requirements as far as the terms of the loan, the debt-to-income ratio, all kinds of things. So the ability-to-repay rules and the qualified mortgage rules are a big game changer, and you'll be hearing a lot about those, and those are effective next January. So you can see already the nature of mortgage lending is changing because of these various rules. You turn over to page 4, let's get a couple more pieces of the puzzle. They've changed the rules when it comes to the HOEPA loans. Those are your high-cost mortgage loans. They're changing it, so instead of you comparing the APR to the Federal Reserve's H-15 stuff for comparable types of loans, you're going to instead be comparing APR to APOR. They've changed the points and fees test, and they've added a new trigger that's based on whether the loan has prepayment penalties or not. So in addition to changing the coverage rules for HOEPA so that now more loans will undoubtedly fall within the realm of high-cost mortgage loans, they've also said that you are going to be required prior to consummation of a high-cost mortgage loan to confirm that your applicant has received pre-consummation home ownership counseling from a certified counseling organization. That is also going to be required on loans to first-time borrowers where there could be a negative amortization component. And they've amended Reg X to say, oh, yeah, and on applications for RESPA-covered loans, following the effective date of this rule, you're going to have to give a list of home ownership counseling organizations within 3 business days of the time of application. Then you've got the servicing rules, and those are